CrossCode is a game that I feel has gone under the radar for many players. I myself only first knew about the game while looking for other games that were similar to a game I had recently played, Octopath Traveler. In reality, I wouldn't say they're that similar at all, but I'm still glad I found it nonetheless, because CrossCode is an absolute masterpiece of a game. In fact, CrossCode was so good that I played through the entire game twice, once last year and once this year, which for me is something I rarely ever do with games. Now that basic introductions are out of the way, it's time to actually tell you about the game. The main concept of CrossCode is it's a sort of game within a game. What I mean by this is the majority of CrossCode, you are playing in a game called Crossworlds, a sort of MMO similar to World of Warcraft or the Days of RuneScape, developed by the in-game company Instantainment in what we can assume is considerably far in the future. It's important to note that CrossCode is, however, a single-player RPG game. The MMO is just the setting for the game taking place. You'll spend the game as Leah, a girl who seems to have lost all her memory and is unable to speak due to a malfunction of the speech module. She's greeted by another important character, Sergei Asimov, an employee of Instantainment, who is helping her to recover her memory after finding her buried deep within the files of the game. Looking for answers, Sergei places her in the game without the permission of his company. Sergei tasks Leah with progressing through the game of Crossworlds in the hope that her memory can return. The plot of the game Crossworlds is to travel the world, completing what is known as the Track of the Ancients, a set of trials left behind by a previous highly advanced civilization. Those who are committed to following the track are known as Seekers, and the goal for every Seeker is to complete the track and unlock the secret of the Ancients, while unlocking the power of 4 mystical elements. These are heat, cold, shock, wave. Like the usual setup to most MMOs, there will be certain classes that can be chosen when you first enter the game. These are the Tribe Leader, the Quadriguard, the Pentifist, the Hexacast, and the Spiromancer. In Crossworlds, you will play as a Spiromancer. As mentioned before, you will play exclusively as Leah, with Sergei accompanying you over communications. However, there are also a great deal of characters that you will meet along the way that are involved in the greater overall story. The first character you will meet, Emily, a competitive but friendly new player, will quickly befriend Leah within the game, with her class of choice being Pentafist, joining the player's party from the onset. Shortly after completing the main tutorial of the game, you'll meet one of my favourite characters, Apollo, who acts as Leah's main rival throughout the game, but also becomes a close ally as the game progresses further. I really like Apollo because a lot of his dialogue is highly dramatised, meaning encounters with him are quite funny. He also considers his chosen class of Spiromancer to be a noble class, and the initial rivalry begins when Apollo suspects Leah of cheating. He's also accompanied by his friend John, a Quadriguard who acts as a mediator of sorts between Apollo and Leah in the initial stages of their rivalry. After that confrontation, Leah and Emily will meet Lucas, who will show them around the first world as a guide for the player. He's a high-level player, so he won't join the player's party, however he is relatively important to the late-game plot. Finally, you'll join a guild known as the First Scholars, with the following members H-Lin, Beowulf, Lucas, and Buggy, who seek us players to be the first to discover the in-game lore to the secrets of the Ancients. It's also here that you'll meet your final potential party member, Toby Tremblay, better known as Citron, a Hexacast studying biology who Emily kindly refers to as a bit of a nerd. CrossCode has 3 main elements to its mechanics. These are puzzles, parkour, and punching things. Lots and lots of punching things. Like most RPGs, you level up by defeating enemies or by completing quests. CrossCode's combat is real-time and fast-paced, which it takes full advantage of, with fluid fighting and movement partnered alongside innovative enemies that get more elaborate to defeat as you progress further. You use a combination of traditional close combat and the use of a VRP, which is used for both elements of the combat as a ranged attack and also many puzzle elements of the game, such as hitting switches. You'll be able to improve the effectiveness of your stats by equipping better equipment, typical RPG stuff, nothing new there. However, CrossCode has a neat little mechanic called combat skills. Combat arts are basically special moves that a player can use once their SP bar becomes full enough to perform the skill. They have 3 tiers that can be unlocked through progressing along a circuit tree, essentially a skill branch of sorts that can be increased every time you level up and earn a circuit point. Each element has its own branch, with high tier combat arts being unlocked the further across the branch. And trust me, these are overpowered and feel pretty badass to pull out.
I am the Hedgehog Slaughterer!
Let's talk about platforming, because CrossCode has many platforming elements to it. Each area of the world is filled with lots of locations ripe for exploration. On my first playthrough, it took me a solid 2 hours to realise that yes, you can in fact climb up to higher levels of ground, but once you understand that most areas have platforms that act as stairs, either hidden or in plain sight, then it unlocks a great deal of routes that you hadn't realised existed. Often, new pathways can be unlocked by completing intricate button puzzles or making elaborate jumps over barriers. Certain jumps can only be made if you partner it with a spin, which can give you a slight bit more distance in exchange for less height. Generally, advanced jumping routes offer rewards such as advanced gear, so are generally worth looking out for. CrossCode has a strong puzzle element to it. Lots of small stuff in the game rely on some level of puzzle solving, but none more so than the temples in this game. The temples are long, complicated, thought-out dungeon-type rooms that will challenge your smooth brain. I hope you have a good understanding of basic angles, because you are going to need it. CrossCode basically relies on elaborate bounces of the VRP off different surfaces in order to reach a target like a switch or timer, so you may find yourself making some rather advanced trick shots, and trust me, be ready to get absolutely frustrated with some of these puzzles. Because oh my god are some of these hard. The first couple temples are fairly linear, still tricky, but they do feel doable. But in later temples, I have been absolutely dumbfounded as to how to clear a puzzle in the room. Even on a second playthrough of the game, I have found myself struggling with the completion. So if you like a challenging experience for puzzles, then this will absolutely suit you down to the ground. What I will say is that when you do finally complete a particularly complex puzzle, you will feel like you have 500 IQ galaxy brain and can solve the mysteries of quantum physics, and then you'll enter the next room and proceed to have it all completely sucked away as you stare at the next soul-destroying puzzle in front of you. In fact, in a later stage of the game, they decided to put 3 temples in a row, each one taking close to an hour and a half to complete, to progress further into the story of the game. And my goodness, I have never been closer to a mental breakdown. Of course, you can take a break and leave the temple at any other time, to do them, you know, whenever you want. But me personally, the plan was to just get them all done and out the way. I definitely don't hate temples, in fact I think they're pretty clever and cool, but 3 in one go is a little bit soul-crushing. At the end of every temple there is a huge boss fight, and these are where I find myself enjoying CrossCode the most. I absolutely adore the boss fights in this game. They are just so incredibly clever and unique. Don't get me wrong, they are hard, and I'd be surprised if you didn't take at least a couple of attempts to beat. They often take advantage of the new element you've just learned well in the temple, and test how well you have mastered it. Some bosses will introduce a whole new mechanic mid-battle, causing you to have to adapt on the fly and figure out a game plan. It's really fun, and you'll come out feeling rewarded when you finally land that sweet, killing blow. It's hard to pick just one of the many great boss battles in this game, but I strongly enjoyed the battle against a great ape and the ancient guardian whale, as I really liked how it utilised the shock element, as well as enjoying the final boss, which I'm not going to show as I want to keep that a surprise for people that plan to play. CrossCode gives the player a choice as to whether they want to grind for XP or not to some extent. It's still highly recommended that you give a good majority of the side quests a go, as they're pretty varied for what they are and still fun to play. You can also earn a good deal of currency and high level equipment, saving the need to actually buy them. This in turn will usually level you up to a good enough level for the main game. However, if you do want to grind, you will be rewarded with significantly higher level equipment gained by collecting precious trade resources that have unique buffs, and you know, they can add some uniqueness to your playstyle. Just make sure you don't have any items equipped that grant a 0 XP modifier right before you complete the final section of the game. I'm speaking from severely underleveled experience here, but nonetheless, I still completed this section even if it was more of a challenge. Now, this is your spoiler warning. I'm going to be talking about the late game plot for CrossCode, so if you plan on playing the game, which I highly encourage, skip to this timestamp. During a guild raid featuring the First Scholars, Leah is pulled out of the main environment server by an unknown force known only as the Designer, leaving her to fight him in a fight you will inevitably lose. Following this, Leah will be sent to a place known as Vermillion Wasteland, a seemingly discontinued area of Crossworlds, now used for more nefarious purposes. Both Leah and Lucas find themselves trapped within the Vermillion Wasteland, with other players around them also trapped, unable to leave or log out of the game. some spiraling into madness the longer they are trapped. As we come to learn through a rather forceful intervention by a character known as Shizuka, Leah is actually an AI developed using Shizuka's memory and avatar, created from a modified version of the CrossCode 2.0 by her brother Satoshi. However, Entertainment disapproved of the technology, leaving Satoshi, Shizuka, and another member of the company, Gotham, to seek new ventures with a mysterious new investor by the name of Sidwell. Sergei was also offered a place, but declined. Sidwell and Leah shared a close relationship when she was first created, likely because she was mute and it reminded him of the woman he loved. He has tried on many occasions to befriend Leah.
Leah, do you remember what a clear sky looks like at night? I hope one day you will. It is like a boundless sea of stars.
However, unbeknownst to his new employees, Sidwell had much more sinister aims for the AI project, using it to create evil tar copies of players in the game and torture them for confidential information, all while hiding within the depths of Crossworlds. When they found out, Sidwell blackmailed the employees, threatening their lives if they did not cooperate. Shizuka and Satoshi, who is an avatar of his real-life self after passing away, secretly hatched a plan to topple his criminal business by putting Leah in the files. As you might guess, this means that the version of Lucas that Leah met was an Evotar, and the two of them staged an escape from the Vermillion Wasteland. This is one of my favourite parts of the game, because while conquering the Vermillion dungeon tower, there are some really cool parts where you break the game and quite literally bust through the fourth wall. It's a really nice element to see, and I think it's really neat that the game uses the fact it's in a game to send hacks across to Leah to defeat significantly powerful bosses. It's really something you gotta experience for yourself. After escaping the tower, the designer, who is revealed to be Gotham, takes Evotar Lucas captive within the tower. However, Leah manages to return to the main world of CrossCode. After using Leah's memories that have now been recovered due to the events in Vermillion, Leah and Sergei find the hideout of Satoshi and hatch a plan to rescue all the Evotars and put an end to Sidwell's schemes. Sergei calls on the help of Leah's friends, who all agree to rescue the Evotars as they storm the Wasteland, apart from Citron, who is busy. Leah has an access key that Satoshi gave her, and he put her in the files, which she can use to save the Evotars on the server. After a final boss fight with the designer, a very good boss fight, he gives Leah access to the server room to stop Sidwell, after which he commits suicide before Leah can stop him. In the server room, Sidwell simply walks away, much to the dismay and anger of Sergei. In Sidwell's eyes, it was just another failed venture. So, that's everything I have to say. Wait a minute. And that's CrossCode, a phenomenal RPG that you really should play. Every single character is brilliant, the story is amazing, and the gameplay itself is just beyond anything I could have expected going into it. It's available on Steam for just £15, which is an absolute steal, and it's featured on Xbox Game Pass as well as the Nintendo Switch. It's also got a killer DLC which ties up any and all loose ends, which I'm not going to spoil, and a New Game Plus which adds some rather amusing dialogue to the game. I really hope that this video convinced you to give CrossCode a shot. If you enjoyed it, remember to subscribe and share it with your friends. It really does mean a whole bunch to me. Anyway, thank you for watching the video.